Part 2 is also doing relatively okay at the box office, but is it doing okay enough? Cultured, how is Dune Part 2 holding up at the box office?
Well, I look, the global box office number, they're crossing that 600 million barrier. So it seems like it's in decent shape and will do rather well. When you look at it overall, though, you have questions around it as to whether or not they're going to make a third film for more than the box office reasons. As you've alluded to, and as I put links in our private chat about the film, it it isn't it isn't clear how Denis would move forward and how he will make a film that's better, in his words, than Dune 2. Looking at the box office, which I've just pulled up now, you can see that it's sitting at 574 million. They estimate this weekend that this will actually, with an international numbers, will actually exceed 600 million here when we get updated later today. So it's in the right area where, with a couple more weeks of effort, this could maybe get over the hump into the 700 million territory. I think it's sputtering out. And it really does need 7 to 800 million to justify, well, any kind of a sequel, because it's got to at least break even. It's getting close, but not quite there yet.
Yeah, and when it hasn't done it yet,
Yeah.
that's not looking
Well,
not looking too good.
we keep pointing out the elephant in the room that nobody else wants to look at, which is the two giant monsters that are going to show up on the screen next week.
Well, regardless, I think that anybody looking at this as any kind of disappointment is clearly, it can't be, because it's doing so much better than the first film. It's still selling out the premium seats. This is going to play for a while. Now it's going to have to fight Kong and Godzilla for the big screens.
Well, the other thing no one is commenting on is that this looks like the Sandworm.
It does kind of, actually. You're right.
Yeah, it kind of does. That's
that's the kind of analysis I bring to this group.
That's right.
That's how the Sandworm moves too. You got the little squiggles. That's
no, I think it's funny because, like, Andre, I mean, I get where you're coming from. You're maybe alluding to that maybe a third film isn't so much a foregone conclusion, I guess, at this point, but I'm not so sure on that. I'm thinking that I think Denny's playing hard to get. I think
and let's get into, because just to get everyone on board, this is something that I spoke about before we went live here, so I'm going to bring this story up. And the reason I mentioned that is because for months now, Denis Villeneuve, he has been talking about how they're writing part 3. He's wanting to do part 3. They're ready to go with part 3. But then today, comicbookmovie.com writes, Dune Part 3 will only happen if director Denis Villeneuve can make it better than Part 2. Well, that's very new. I don't recall him saying that before. I don't recall any kind of hedge like that. I remember him saying in the past that he wants to see the Atreides story brought to its end. That's Paul Atreides, to be clear. He wants to do all 3 movies. He wants to do Dune Messiah, basically. And now, suddenly, when the movie hasn't crossed 600 million yet, something which, honestly, it probably should have by now, he's suddenly throwing in a hedge.
I think that's a foregone conclusion at this point, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hope you're right.
No, I honestly think you're right. I think that's where I was headed with this, is what you're saying here, is that because all along he wanted to make a part 3, and the way he was talking before was the way we all were kind of looking at it, is we had no idea if this was going to do nearly as well as the first one, right? And I'm sure Warner Brothers and Legendary were looking at it the same way. So he's talking like, yeah, well, let's just hope that this film does well, then we can worry about a part 3, because I really want to make a part 3. And now that the cards are in his favor, he's like, yeah, I'll make part 3 if things are right, which means I want all my things the way I want them, basically. And I think he's playing hard to get. I think that at the end of the day, he just better hope Legendary's like, well, we're going to make it with or without you. So,
But he's always kind of vacillated between on again, off again, because an article that I have pulled up from December 8th, the end of the year, Denis says Dune 3 script is almost finished, but for my mental sanity, I might do something else in between. This is the third time that I can recall he's said that he might take a break between films.
Yeah, this is the first time that I recall him saying, I'll do it if.
Right.
Exactly my point. I was like, that's what stuck out to me was, wait a minute here. You were practically like begging for this to happen one way or another, even if the second one fails. Now all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'll do it if they meet my demands, basically.
I really hope that is what all this is, because he has kind of put them in a predicament now. He better have a vision.
Are you kidding me? This is the biggest movie of the year so far.
Yeah, I know it's the biggest movie of the year, but box office wise, it's not like that's a good thing. Like, how much did ignore all comparisons. Ignore how it did relative to the first one, which opened day and day on Max and everything like that. Ignore every other movie this year. Ignore all the competition. Just look at how much did this movie cost to make?
190.
And what's the break-even point for something that costs 190?
400.
Well, okay, hang on.
It's more like 6, but yeah.
Well, yeah, closer to 6. But it depends on the advertising now. We were just talking earlier how they've cut back on advertising. So
not for this film.
I didn't see I seen more Ghostbusters advertising than I did for Dune.
Yeah. Well, consider this. Dune 2 is basically one of the biggest, if not the biggest grossing film ever for just IMAX alone. Just IMAX alone to date, I think it has over $61 million, in its initial pull. So that's about 25% of total domestic ticket sales here in the States. That's big news, but they're losing IMAX screens right now because I'm going to keep saying this. You got Godzilla X Kong.
They're competing with themselves. That's the freaking problem here.
That's true.
It'd be different if it was two different companies. You got the same companies that are gonna benefit one way or the other, right? So that's the thing. And if anything, the theaters were griping that they had to take Ghostbusters in certain larger theaters when people wanted Dune still, and that was stupid because Ghostbusters wasn't even shot for IMAX.
It wasn't shot for IMAX, no.
Yeah. Well, I'm optimistic because the good thing with 190 million, if it crosses 600, that's a 3 times multiplier relative to the production cost, and that should be sufficient to a sequel. And
the video must be selling well because they've re-released it like twice now.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I just hope it goes away. Because now we need Villeneuve to kind of finish it, because he dropped the ball in the ending, and I'll say that. And now he has to do a completely different original story because he can't tell the story the way it was meant to be told. They closed the door on that.
Yeah. That may be where he's kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, but I can't believe he wouldn't have left himself for a better opening. But you're right. My issue with the film was how it panned out, because the first film was so well done. The first half of this film was amazing, but you're right. I don't know where they go from here. It's almost like a Last Jedi kind of situation.
Well,
kind of. I mean, we're going to have to get a completely different part 3 that maybe tries to end in a similar place, but takes a very different journey there, because this ain't the same thing. They can't no longer tell the story of the book.
No, I agree with you there too.
And for no good reason.
Yeah, really. Because there was a full story there to be told. I don't know why. And then his excuses to, why, it was just even weirder. But anyway, no, I'm curious to see how this rolls. But I have a feeling, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that, the studio is very happy with this and he knows it. And his agents are now telling him play a little harder to get. But I don't know. What does Paul think as somebody in? Yeah,
I don't know what he's playing. I mean, all I know is that was the most sneaky cliffhanger I think I can recall. Oh no,
you're not wrong. Yeah,
all the other factions are now hovering over Arrakis and waiting. Stay tuned next week, kids.
Yeah, it's kind of hateful to your audience, to be fair. And this is the thing why I said it was a good movie and a terrible adaptation, because it, as Tom points out, it really does make it so he has to craft a completely new ending, or a book 3 per se, Dune Messiah. And Six Behind the Scenes brought up this from a recent article, and I'll scroll into it. There's an interview with Denis Villeneuve, however you want to say his name, because it's weird
Villeneuve.
French. I don't care. So they were talking about the sequelitis and everything else, and hang on, it's in here. Please bear with me a moment. It says in this article that I can't seem to find. It says it's now out there. It's now out there that I have this whole thing.
You can Control F and just type in a keyword.
Here we go. Yeah. So it's now out there that Dune Part 2 doesn't wrap up the story and ends again on another cliffhanger. This is speaking to what Paul was talking about. Are you glad that's out there so people aren't surprised? Because I think a lot of people think this wraps everything up, and it doesn't. And Denis says, I was destabilized by the appetite for Dune Messiah. I'm here to talk about Dune Part 2. There's a part of me who is very happy to be away from the desert. And then he goes on and says, for now, I've had my share of sand, and I would love to take a little break from Arrakis before going back, if I ever go back. I will go back if there's a strong screenplay on the table. Now, mind you, I just showed you an article from December 8th last year where he said the script's almost done. Anyway, if it's a work in progress right now, so I have nothing to say about Dune Messiah other than it could be interesting to finish. Totally finalize the poetry this arc, but I will say that for me, I tried to complete the story in the first 2 movies. And to see that if it stopped there, there was a part of me that I knew I will have to have spent enough time in Arrakis.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, this guy is an exercise in contradictions.
That's called being French.
I
think he's
isn't he French Canadian, which is worse?
Yeah,
Yes.
he is. I think he's treading water here and not wanting to give anything away. See, if he was smart, he would said, "We've got the script and we've decided that Pauly Shore is going to be the next director."
But if only I believed that was true, Paul. Pauly Shore might be a good choice.
Buddy.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because this is going to be one of those will they, won't they? And the longer it goes on, the less likely, because the studios are going to be like, we have other things we got to do.
Well, that's where I said eventually they're just going to go, look, we're going to make this with or without you. So
this clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There, you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe, and join us.